Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
All right, Vikings Vent Line every Sunday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys listening, watching, and supporting Purple Daily, of course. This is a Vikings fan show or an NFL fan show. We'll welcome anyone on Vent Line for the most part. If you'd like to be a part of Vikings Vent Line, you can hit me up. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com for the podcast audience. And if you haven't been on before, would love to hear from you. If you have takes on the Vikings' upcoming schedule, if you have takes on the offseason that's taken place, anything Vikings related, show related, this is a safe space for you. So if you'd like to be a part of a future episode, please hit me up. Would love to talk to as many Vikings fans as possible. I like to host the offseason edition with Vikings fans throughout the season. And then during the actual regular season, Mackie, Judd, and myself, we will jump on Vent Line. We'll welcome as many fans as possible and talk about the game. But on Vikings offseason Vent Line, still have plenty of stuff to talk about. So I'm super excited to talk to Ann and Cody here in just a sec. Shout out to our friends at Quick Trip. Quick Trip is the presenting sponsor of Purple Daily. We appreciate them. So shout out to Quick Trip. If you're in the Midwest or if you're near Quick Trip, go stop and fill up on that quality gasoline guarantee. We appreciate that. Again, Purple Daily, daily Vikings entertainment. Maybe you have discovered this show. Maybe you're a new J.J. McCarthy fan. You followed him to the Vikings. This is Purple Daily. We're daily Vikings entertainment. Purple Daily is every single day, 365 days a year. So we appreciate everyone listening and watching. And welcome to Purple Daily if this is the first time you have discovered this program. All right, let's jump into Vikings Vent Line. We're going to get Ann and Cody in here. All right. Ann has been dying to get on Vent Line. I'm super excited to have her on. This is going to be super fun. I know you're excited to be on. Welcome to the show, Ann. How are you?
Thank you. I am doing well. I am excited. I became an off-season fan just last year because I didn't really see the need for off-season content. And then I listened. I was like, this is great. It gives you some, I got more information about the draft picks and all that. So I never miss an episode now.
Awesome. Yeah, it's kind of funny how the NFL has morphed into not just the 17-game schedule and the playoffs and Super Bowl. It's kind of turned into this whole beast that's year-round, and we love to create as much content as possible, so appreciate you sticking with us and discovering Purple Daily, too. That's awesome. Cody, you've been on Vent Line before, and where are we right now? Looks like you're in like an oasis. Where the heck are you?
Yeah, we bought some land last year and finally moved out here. So I'm just hanging out with the animals. I just finished feeding everybody, so wow. That's what I was taking care of right before we started.
Are you in Minnesota? Where are you?
Eastern North Carolina.
Eastern North Carolina. Okay, very cool. I got family in Raleigh, Cary. I think we've talked about that before. Love me some North Carolina.
We're about 3 or 4 hours from there.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, it's a big state. Obviously a big state. And are you from Minnesota? Where are you from?
So originally from Winona, Minnesota. So right on that Mississippi River where half the family was Packers fans, half the family was Vikings. It didn't make, when they played on Christmas Eve, that was not good. But I moved down to Chicago, so I've seen more Vikings games in the Bears Stadium than I have in my home territory, and it's a much rougher experience.
Are you excited? I know they've been talking forever about a new stadium. Are you ready for a new stadium? Do you want a new stadium down there in Chicago?
They do, for sure. They didn't want it where it was originally going in Arlington Heights. That's a good hour out of the city.
Oh, wow.
So it's good that everyone's happy that it's going to remain in the city, which makes sense. But the other stadium just never felt like a good home. And the seats were just freezing. It just was, yeah. I'm looking forward to them getting a new stadium and going to get ice thrown at my head every year again. So that'll be great.
Yes. Yeah, the joys of outdoor. US Bank Stadium is great. It's enclosed. It's warm. It's the same temperature every single day. But yeah, some of those outdoor games, I think Minnesotans want to be outdoors to a degree, but man, then you step into US Bank when it's negative 35, 45 with wind chill, and you're appreciative of, the central air of 71 degrees and a comfortable seat and not freezing your butt off on a bleacher. So I don't blame you at all. Well, guys, let's jump into this here. Cody, I'll start with you. Do you think the Vikings are a playoff team? They're about 7.5 wins for their over-under. They've overturned a big in 2024.
It's fringe. I feel very on the fence with it. And it all just depends on where J.J. McCarthy is, and it depends on their start before the bye. They have 5 pretty tough games. They always throw up a goose egg against a team that they should beat, which could easily be the Giants. They could, if they go 3-2 to start the season, which they could do, or they could be 0-5 like they have been numerous times in the last 10 years. But if they hit a stride going into the bye week at 3-2, I think they at least pick up a wild card spot. I don't know. It's very very competitive in the NFC North this year and in the NFC in general. So I don't see them getting the 1 seed or even a 2 seed, but a wild card spot should be where they should be comfortable.
Were you a fan of the J.J. McCarthy pick then? Is that the kind of quarterback you wanted? Were you kind of good with any of the QBs in the first round? Was that the first one you kind of wanted to see the Vikings grab?
Frankly, I don't watch college football, so I don't really know many names until sportscasters and media influencers start talking about them, and that's when I start garnishing my own opinion on it. But all in all, I like J.J. McCarthy's head. That's where it all starts, and that's where half the time it finishes. You could be a freak athlete, but if you don't have the mental capacity to understand where the ball needs to be, when it needs to be there, Jamarcus Russell, case in point, had an absolute cannon of an arm, but his mental game was trash, and it didn't translate into the NFL. I think J.J. McCarthy is as set up as anybody could be to succeed in the NFL. So I like the pick a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch kind of how he matures and develops. To your point, it feels like intelligent-wise and headspace-wise, he is probably light years ahead of the most people of his age, and we'll see if that can help translate physically too onto the field. And how about you? Do you think the Vikings have done enough here? They'd missed the playoffs last year. Do you think these new additions and the new roster turnover, do you see the Vikings returning as a playoff team in 2024?
I'm going to echo the sentiments that that if they make it through those first 5 games, if they get halfway through the season and are at 500, I think they have a really good shot. If they start tanking early and circling the drain, I don't think that they have the cohesiveness, or Brian Flores has better weapons, but last year was like pulling rabbits out of his hat to get the defense, but the defense always is going to go downhill with injuries and fatigue, and the offense is supposed to get better. And having some new weapons on offense and a new quarterback, 2 new quarterbacks, not that I am glad that Kirk is gone. I was never a fan, and I'm still not. So I feel like if they can pull out those wins and go into the halfway through the season just dead even, they don't have to have a winning record. I could see them getting a wild card at the end of the year. Not the division, though.
Yeah, division. I'm kind of with you guys. I think the division is gonna be just too tough to climb up. Can they sneak in as one of those 7 seeds, 6 seeds? Probably. That if things go their way. So, Ann, obviously they get rid of Kirk, but then Sam Darnold's probably going to be your starting quarterback for a little bit. Are you comfortable with Darnold being the guy for a little bit? Do you think eventually they'll go to JJ? What's your kind of comfort level with Sam Darnold kind of being your de facto starting quarterback to start the year?
I hope that they give JJ a little bit of time because, again, we've seen so many quarterbacks crash and burn being forced in, Darnold being one of them. And I think if Darnold is given this opportunity, and you could tell when he gave his first press conference, he doesn't have the fire because he was beaten down so badly. He's a first-round pick, and if anyone can get someone out of his head, the head case Kirk Cousins, who overthought everything, Kevin O'Connell worked wonders with Kirk. So I think that Darnold deserves this offense, has some weapons, and I would love to see him go the full year to give JJ that time to get the chemistry, and Darnold to give him, for him to watch the game and get up to speed. But if Darnold does not do the job, then of course make the switch. But I'm comfortable with Darnold leading. I think he's given a second opportunity, and we'll jump on that.
Yeah, I think KOC can get a lot more out of him. He's been able to do that, right? We saw that last year with Dobbs, even in Mullins to a degree. I know the cliff kind of proverbial hit them, and they kind of fell off by the end of the year. But Kevin O'Connell's this quarterback whisperer, which is obviously a big part of his game. And if he can get something out of Sam Darnold, and Darnold, was beaten down to a little bit. He was probably thrown to the wolves with the Jets and the Panthers, and he went to a really steady system, I think, there with San Francisco, and having the 49ers influence with Kyle Shanahan, maybe having a good head coach around him from back-to-back years now, from Kyle Shanahan into Kevin O'Connell. Really excited to see that. So you were talking schedule-wise. Let's stick on the schedule here for just a little bit here, Ann. What games are you really looking forward to the most this year? Are there stretches of games you're excited to watch? Are there also games where you're like, oh my gosh, the Vikings are going to be fighting it a little bit here? What stretch of the schedule are you kind of looking forward to the most?
Well, obviously the late season games against division rivals, that's always exciting. I just want, if I have two wishes, it will be for them to pummel the Giants when they play the Giants. Just pummel Daniel Jones into the ground. And then when they play, of course, the Falcons, I want Harrison Smith to have Kirk Cousins smelling dirt as much as possible. So those two games are my favorites. The London game against Aaron Rodgers, no love for Aaron Rodgers either. So I'm hoping that defense gives over the pond some good smashes. But those are the three games that I'm looking forward to the most.
Are you looking forward to, Cody, the revenge game against Daniel Jones and the Giants? Are you ready for them to hopefully start the season strong? They stumbled obviously against the Bucs, and everyone thought that was going to be a gimme win for them last season in Week 1. What part of the schedule are you looking forward to, and are there areas of that schedule you're like, oh boy, this could get a little bit dicey?
Indianapolis is an underrated game for me. Kind of like the game where they broke the record for greatest comeback ever. It's a game they should win. They should win against New York. New York is a laughingstock, and I already looked at FanDuel, and the Vikings at this point are starting out as only a 1-point favorite. Essentially, everything is 50-50 because nobody knows what the Vikings are going to bring. If we remember correctly, Brian Flores, just like Mike Zimmer's defense, at the end of the year, they started having a lot of holes. People started figuring them out, and they couldn't recover. They got 30-pieced by Green Bay and Detroit in back-to-back weeks to end the season, which just added insult to injury all in all. Is Brian Flores going to finish the job, or can he do what he needs to do to get the defense right? We got younger, but essentially we just traded a bunch of pieces with the Texans. Is it going to be enough to help the back end, which really struggled? If it wasn't for the three safeties we had over top all the time, we would have got murdered almost every single week. Let's just be honest. You can't rush 8 and have a very porous back end and try to win football games. So once Kirk went down and they stopped being able to run the ball and run clock a little bit, it really showed that the defense was struggling hard. So I think Week 1, get out the gate, throttle somebody, really punch somebody in the face. If it has to be the Giants, it has to be the Giants. If it's San Francisco at home, then so be it. I hope that's the case. I don't expect it because I'm a realist, but I would sincerely hope so. And for which game I'm most excited for, I would say whichever game they decide to put J.J. McCarthy in. That's a super fragile and volatile situation, just like with every fan base. If Sam Darnold does start Week 1 and he struggles, you're going to hear half of the fan base going, put J.J. McCarthy in now. Sam Darnold's washed. We need McCarthy now, and it's going to rip the fan base in half from that moment on. I hope Sam Darnold proves everybody wrong and he crushes the game. I hope that's best case scenario. You want J.J. McCarthy to play because that's your first top 10 draft pick since Christian Ponder, who sucked butts. So we hope that J.J. McCarthy is a much better leaf turn than Christian Ponder was. But if Sam Darnold ends up being much better than what everybody else expected, I'd be super happy for that too.
Yeah, we were trying to figure that out, obviously, on the Thursday episode of Purple Daily. Where does J.J. McCarthy probably start? Does he come out of the bye? Do you wait a little bit against maybe a team like the Colts, where I know you're saying that could be a trap game where fans are maybe overlooking it? I mean, do you kind of have a rough timeline, Ann, of maybe when J.J. McCarthy would take things over? Do you think Sam Darnold does kind of ride things out for the majority of the year? Do you kind of have an area of time or a timeline in mind of when you'd think J.J. McCarthy will be the starting quarterback of the Vikings?
I think
sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead, Ann.
If Darnold struggles, I would expect him to come in after the bye week. I just think that if Darnold is not getting the job done, they're going to make the switch. If he is getting the job done, I don't see a reason for putting him in, except if we are out of the playoffs and they want him to get some experience. Then I would support, let's put him in for a few games and let him get his feet wet for the following year. But I think it's just so dependent on Darnold and the skill of the crew and what our record is. If we're winning with Darnold and we've got a shot to make the playoffs or doing well, I don't see why Kevin O'Connell and the team would make the switch.
Cody, you brought up those pitchforks that fans are absolutely going to have no matter what, whether it's the first half of week one or just any bad game from Sam Darnold, which does seem inevitable. Timeline wise, do you think that there's a soft spot where McCarthy does take things over as a starting QB?
Assuming he stays on the track that at least gets put out to us, the little people. Like Ann said, based off a record, if they're 3-2 going into the bye, they might push it to week 8, week 9. But if they're 1-4 and they still really feel like they've got a playoff shot, which looking at the schedule, there's a decent indicator that they could make a comeback within that week 6 to week 12 time frame. If they're 1-4, week 6 could be a good spot for him to start. It would be a bit rough. I don't remember who they come back off of the bye against, but they would be well rested. It would give him an extra week and a half coming from UK to practice. He'll have enough camaraderie with the ones to at least understand what he's doing. And why not? If you're 1-4, what are you shooting for at this point anyway? If you feel like you got a real shot and you feel like this guy was worth moving up with draft capital, even though it was one spot, it was enough to garnish a bunch of clickbait to say the Vikings moved up for this quarterback. Yeah, they did, but I mean, if they like him that much, they'll put him in when they want him to be in there.
Absolutely. So defensively, we touched on this a little bit. They might not have the corners, but they have kind of overhauled a lot of those pass rushers after saying goodbye to Danielle Hunter. Do you think that the defense can hold up here? Do you think that Brian Flores has enough cooks in the kitchen to get after the QB? And is this going to be still a little bit of a learning process or a low ceiling, high floor type of situation? What do you kind of expect from the Vikings defense in 2024 with the second year under Brian Flores?
I think it's only up from here. I think that he was last year dealing with a lot of rookies. He was dealing with people who were in the first year of his system. And I loved his press conference when he said, when they asked what defense are you going to play, and he's like, well, who are we playing against? It's like, that's a classic line. And now you have I think, a trio of the best safeties. Everyone keeps saying Harrison Smith is old, but I still remember Antoine Winfield in 2012, right before he left for the Seahawks and then retired. He had the most tackles. I think he had over 100 tackles. It was either his best or second best season. If Harrison Smith, Brian Flores used him way too much because he had to. Yeah. He had no other options. If he now has Bynum and Metellus who know where they're going, they're playing in their second year. He's got some better weapons, and at least we replaced or shored up the defensive line. I think having familiarity is going to have the defense not fall off as much as they did, and having fresh Harrison Smith, I'm hoping for Captain Chaos out there. He may not be the hit man, but I think if he's on third downs, making sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to, they're going to give the ball back to the offense more often than not. And I see only good things from this defense, given what they did last year with very little. And a shout out to Jay Ward. He made some rookie mistakes. I was super excited when the Vikings took him. He is a special teams ace. And if he stops doing the bonehead stuff, I think he can really make an impact too. So I'm all in on this defense.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have that defense kind of return to prominence again. It was great under Zimmer, but then it eroded quickly, and it's just kind of been a jumbled mess for the last few years. And, Hitman is, basically the quarterback of that defense to a degree, given his veteran leadership and how many different spots and areas he can line up at and just obviously communicate with, being in the league for such a long time. I mean, Cody, do you think that the defense under Flores can sustain success? I know you mentioned how previous years it's fallen off a cliff. It fell off a cliff with Flores last year towards the end of the year. Do you think that there's enough this year to kind of sustain more of a longer term area of success on that side of the ball?
I do. I mean, if anything, he's going to be one of the only people from the Belichick tree to have sustained success. He's got the head for it. He's got the mind for it. Everybody seemed to rally around him last year. The only thing I wish that happened in the draft or shortly after, I don't know, it could still happen. Send some flowers to somebody that can interrupt the middle of the pocket, because we haven't had that since Linval Joseph left. That was one of their bread and butter systems, that they push the middle of the pocket. Here, I love Harrison Phillips, but please send some flowers, send some donuts to Calais Campbell, send some to Aaron Donald. See if you can sweeten the deal a little bit to get somebody up the middle to just cause chaos. That would help Dallas Turner a lot. That would help anybody else out on the edge. And ipso facto, it would definitely help Mekhi Blackman have enough time to recover if he gets burnt, or Andrew Booth, or, I think at the end of the year last year, they were just burnt out. They were hurt. They were banged up. They were on the field for 36 of the 48 minutes out of the game, it seemed like, most of the time. Because if the offense wasn't turning the ball over, it was a 3 and out. It seemed like, at least, or it was a 60-yard bomb to Jordan Addison. It was almost no in between at that point. But I think Brian Flores, give him one or two more additions, one or two more depth pieces on the corner, and somebody to push up the middle. Somebody, I don't even care what you do. It could be a passing down every single down. Just push in the middle. Make some kind of chaos up the middle. Make somebody get a double team. Dallas Turner's going to get burnt out if he ends up being the only person that can make any kind of pressure. That's what happened with Daniil Hunter. He still got his ISOs, but it was on 3rd and 16s. It wasn't necessarily on the important downs.
Vikings fans were spoiled, right, with like the Williams wall and Pat Williams into Linval. To your point, like they had like a 16, 17 year run where you didn't really have to worry about the teams running down their throat up the A gap, but also still having areas where they can clog that middle and still put pressure on the QB. They might not be getting credit for the sack, but it makes life a lot harder when obviously the packet starts collapsing because there's a big force in the middle there. I would say that nose tackle, D tackle spot that you're referencing, still an area of concern for the Vikes. And yeah, I don't know if they'll be able to address it just because of the limited cap and availability in general of the supply and demand, but it's still an area that might be a problem on that side of the ball. And any other last hot takes that you have that you'd like to unleash here on Vikings Vent Lines? Any shout outs you'd love to give to? Fire away.
All right. I think Harrison Smith is going to have a better year than people think. I think he's actually going to do, as long as Flores doesn't give him the snap count, I think we could see a sack count of a return to the 2017, not the player, but the amount of production he does. If they give him fresh legs, I think he's going to kill it. And a shout out to my family, my husband and my kids, Alex and Ian, and my mom and dad, who still, my dad, we gave him a big bunch of beer for, before I die beer. He drank only one can because he could only use one good can every game. But, and my auntie Phyllis, who did pass away this year, I dedicate this to her. She's a huge Vikings fan. And she kept giving me, because in the 80s and 70s, women didn't wear many jerseys, or if they did, it was, they had Vikings jewelry. And I have a little pendant. I don't know that there are too many Vikings brooches with faux diamonds, but I've got one. And she gave me, I have so much Vikings jewelry, but like she was such a fan. And it's like, I just hope with Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell and what they're doing, and now the draft picks that they made, I just have not been this excited since like John Randall was on one side of the ball and Chris Carter and Randy. There's an excitement that I've had excitement for one side of the ball and not the other, but this is the first year I've had excitement for both sides of the ball. So I can't wait. But
Awesome.
Love to my family.
Love it. Yeah, and I love the family ties there. That's super funny about the jewelry, to your point. I mean, I'm a 90s baby, so I obviously wasn't around then. But that's super hilarious that it was jewelry. There was no jerseys. I mean, you see women's apparel everywhere now in the NFL. It's really honestly taken off, I feel like, in the last few years, not even the last 20 years. But it's funny that the jewelry thing was really the only way to rock the purple without wearing a men's jersey. So I love that. That's awesome. Cody, how about you, buddy? Any other last hot takes that you'd love to get off your chest? Any shout-outs? Go ahead.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with your sentiment, Ann, about being excited for both sides. I think we have tortured ourselves with holding our breath for 48 minutes a game. If we were swimmers, we'd be an Olympic team by now. But in that regard, I think there will be a lot of success on both sides of the ball this year. They have the right people in the right places to have the success. Once JJ McCarthy starts, he wasn't always a running quarterback at Michigan, but when he needed to, he has the legs and the arm ability to do what he needs to do. In my mind, I don't know Kevin O'Connell's playbook or what he plans to do, and I don't remember seeing it a lot since he's become coach. But with Ty Chandler and Aaron Jones in the backfield, I would suggest watch out for a lot of 2 running back sets. One block, a lot of their bread and butter is play action. If you can get, you don't even have to have 2 wide receivers on set. You could have just Justin Jefferson in the slot, and then you could put TJ Hawkinson or even who'd they just sign, Robert Tonyan, out wide. Mm-hmm. You can do a lot of deeks with that. You can do anything. You could put Aaron Jones out wide. Ty Chandler can probably, I don't know how well he can catch, but he can run like nobody's business. I think there's so much creativity to be done here, and I think a lot of 2 running back sets would confuse a lot of people. A lot of bubble ball.
I love that. Yeah, they have struggled running the football. That's one of the probably knocks on Kevin O'Connell is the effectiveness of running the football, and maybe Aaron Jones still has something left in the tank there, Ty Chandler, and just get creative. To your point, KOC has done a really good job of getting creative, and is there more ways that he can get players involved, that you might think are just depth guys, but if Ty Chandler can get open in space and put guys in good positions to be successful, that's what obviously separates these good offensive-minded coaches from just being guys that are coordinators to guys that can, kind of innovate and change the entire landscape of NFL offenses. And Cody, awesome stuff here on Vikings Vent Line. Great takes, great insight. If you'd like to be a part of a future episode for anyone listening or watching, and hit me up, it's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment, where we just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die. We'll be talking at you on Monday.